The geodesic dome shimmered like a disco ball dipped in blood, drifting serenely above the churning gases of Juxel Prime, a planet so hostile even the clouds had fangs. Inside, 300,000 spectators of every imaginable shape, scent, and screech were crammed elbow to antenna into tiered seating carved from compressed meteorite and surplus war memorials. The championship of subjugated skirmishers was underway, and the smell of fried uranium cutlets mingled with the tang of synthetic adrenaline misted through the vents. This was not just sport. It was spectacle, diplomacy, political theater with body parts. The Galactic Empire liked to remind its vassals of their place through combat, not efficient war, no. That was gauche. What they preferred was ritualized violence with pomp, cruelty, and deeply inefficient bureaucracy. Today's headliner, the grand final. One champion would rise. One would dissolve, beheaded, deshelled, or, last cycle's favorite, unknotted. A creature made entirely of eyes gurgled from the front row, scattering its popcorn. A planetary ambassador, essentially a walking cactus with a law degree, passed out tiny betting chips to his entourage, unaware his assistant was already streaming bets on his personal pheromone channel. A floating platform spun to center. On it, a dozen clawed acrobats reenacted a historic conquest using laser stilts and poetry. It was horrible. The crowd adored it. And yet, in one of the upper tiers, sat a quiet human child. A holographic replay of last cycle's decapitation flickered across the safety glass in front of him. His guardian leaned over, whispering, "Look closely. This is how we remember what mercy costs." The child nodded. He did not understand. But he would. Far below, in the bowels of the arena, a voice warbled through the intercom. "Combatants, please report to disarmament. We are 2 minutes behind and 7 seconds from disciplinary docking." Mira Ellison opened one eye, then the other. She'd been sitting cross-legged in a corner, untouched by the neon blue prep light that throbbed above her. Her fingers still bore the calluses from a different life, one with a daughter who pressed flowers into old rifle cases. One with laughter. She stood. A wardrobe drone zipped toward her like an over-caffeinated wasp. Human combatant. Uniform requisition override. Local species require visible shoulder symbols for betting cues. It tried to dress her in sequins. She sidestepped. No. But... She stared. The drone ran a quick analysis, then retreated while broadcasting a discreet, high-pitched whimper. In the hallway, a combatant passed her. Gelatinous. Towering. Emitting low purrs of threat. It flexed what might have been a spine. "You are what fights for Earth," it burbled in 7 harmonic tones. Mira didn't slow. "You're leaking." The creature paused. Checked. It was. At the disarmament checkpoint, a creature with a meat-hook face and beautiful fingernails checked Myra's duffel. Inside, 1 legal projectile, a standard-issue wrist slate, and a single medallion, a child's necklace with a wooden star. It was ignored. The scanner dinged. Cleared. No one asked why she carried no visible armor. Because humans were charming, soft, emotional. That was the narrative. The Empire encouraged it. Let them have their weeping poets and their tragic widows. Let them send dancers and diplomats and the occasional outpost militia with ancient rifles and a misplaced sense of bravery. Let them bleed prettily. The announcer's voice ruptured across the dome like a drunken banshee with an excellent sound system. Gentle beasts, gravity-bound and gaseous. Welcome to the blood-drenched bubble of glory. Cheering. Clicking. Chemical exhalations. We have seen legs ripped from torsos. Memories rewritten by sigh-screamers. We watched a contestant marry its opponent mid-combat. Congratulations to them and their 7 children. A cluster of sentient fungi waved tiny flags. And now, the final match. One will fall. One will rise. The contractually obligated glory of the Empire will be renewed. Our contestants. Spotlights struck opposite sides of the floating platform. In the east. From the ravaged pits of Toric 6, the destroyer of suns, devourer of kernels, the 9-throated hammer of justice, G-U-L-K-R-A-G. The dome quaked. Hulkrag lumbered forward. He wore 12 trophies on a chain of bones. One of them still blinked. His footsteps made small earthquakes. Children cried. Adults fanned themselves. And in the west, silence. Somewhere, a bat-like ambassador cleared his throat. Representing the Earth conglomerate of unincorporated territories, she of uncertain rank and unconfirmed kill count, the human known only as Mira. A single cough. Then someone laughed. Then more did. And the scoreboard flashed. Hulkrag, 99.7% odds. Mira, 0.3% odds, pending refund request. She stepped into the light. No armor. No fanfare. Just her duffel, her slate, and her eyes, gray, cold, and measuring. Meanwhile, in the subhalls, a technician sneezed on a critical wire and rebooted half the scoreboard, displaying Hulkrag's odds briefly as 0.3%. It was fixed, of course. But one bookmaker noticed. He leaned forward. She's the one, isn't she? His assistant blinked. One what? The Widowmaker. The sniper. The ghost from Vega 6. That's just a myth. Then why's she not dead already? The assistant paused. Looked at the screen. Mira was stretching her arms. She looks calm. Exactly. Up in the commentary chamber, a creature made of teeth and regret adjusted its vocalizer. She's doomed, it declared. No muscle. No venom. No visible enhancements. What is Earth even doing, sending a librarian to a war? The co-commentator, a bored AI hologram named Sasha, replied, bet she brought a library card with a kill switch. The audience laughed. Mostly. Down on the platform, Mira stood 10 meters from Hulkrag. He flexed a thorax the size of a hover car and roared. Acid steamed from his pores. He dropped into a battle stance and barked, "Any last words, human?" She looked up, tapped her slate, then shrugged. "Not for you." The ref drone hovered between them. Combatants, acknowledge the laws of ritual contest. No exit until death or surrender. No psychic scramblers. No relatives in the audience. Begin on the chime. A long pause. The crowd held its breath. Chime. But we pause here, just before the carnage, to acknowledge the great absurdity of the moment. That this arena, soaked in history and arrogance and the biofluids of fallen champions, now held a single human woman. One who had no entourage, no sponsors, no backstory approved for broadcast. One whose family had died quietly 6 cycles ago, when a planetary survey team accidentally secured their habitat for mining rights. A simple clerical error. The kind that set empires spinning and children sobbing. One who had once been called Mom. The dome did not know what was coming, but it would. And it would never forget. The crowd wanted a show. They wanted fireworks, blood, and just enough suspense to make them feel morally superior when it was over. And from their vantage, snacks in mandibles, betting slates in slimy palms, they were certain of one thing: this would not last long. Hulkrag was flexing for the audience again, flaring all 9 of his neck sacks in a display that meant, roughly, "I plan to eat what remains." It was a traditional Torix victory ritual, usually performed after the fight. Hulkrag liked to skip ahead. Across the platform, Mira Ellison stood still. No posing. No warming up. Just that blank, distant gaze that never seemed to settle on one thing. As if she was seeing a different arena entirely. An insectoid noble leaned to his companion, antennae twitching. "They say the human used to be a teacher." "Really? What kind?" "The deadliest kind." They chuckled, which is a sound that, among their species, resembles a blender full of marbles. In the combatant pit minutes earlier, Mira had shared a narrow hallway with her opponent. She stood in the marked yellow zone, arms folded, while Hulkrag loomed over her like a thundercloud made of hate and protein. "You are very small," he rumbled. "You're very loud," she replied. He squinted, or the Torix equivalent, a slight ripple in the chitin behind his middle eye. "You do not fear death?" "I do." but only when it's late. He snorted steam from a gland in his collarbone, a show of amusement and derision. She didn't react. Not even a twitch. Behind them, a protocol drone whispered through a checklist. Combatant introductions. Completed. Mutual acknowledgement. Recorded. Exchange of pre-fight insults. Ongoing. Hulkrag cracked his knuckles, a sound like mountains grinding teeth. This will be quick. I know, Mira said. He tilted his head. The confidence in her tone wasn't bravado. It wasn't even hope. It was fact. Quiet. Certain. He didn't like that. High above, in the Imperial Executive Box, two bureaucrats watched through data-enhanced monocles. They wore gold-threaded sashes and expressions of mild indigestion. "Why is she here again?" asked the taller one, sipping a kelp-based martini. "Quota." The Earth conglomerate filed a protest last cycle about underrepresentation. PR recommended we let one through. Just one. So we sent a woman. Alone. Against a biological tank. Correct. It's inspirational. It's suicidal. Also correct. They turned back to their snacks. One was already checking if Myra's projected obituary would fit in the next day's news cycle. The editors preferred heroic tragedy, preferably with slow motion. Backstage, before her appearance, Mira had been handed a wrist slate. Inside it was her official Empire-sanctioned backstory. Something to play for the audience before the fight. She'd glanced at it. Mirabelle Ellison, age 36. Earth Colony 342. Decorated for courage during the ration riots. Hobbies include quilting, orphan rescue, and hope. She deleted it. In its place, she uploaded nothing. The screen now showed her name. That was all. Now, with the match moments away, the betting feeds were a waterfall of certainty. The odds boards blinked. Hulkrag TO win, 212,000 to 1. One plasmoid placed a bet against Mira surviving past the first 30 seconds. Another bet she'd cry. A third, more optimistic, predicted she'd explode in some uniquely human way. Fireworks, maybe. And then there was one bet placed by a reptilian mercenary from the Cracked Belt Nebula. It wasn't large. Just a single chip. But the note attached read, "For what she did on Vega 6. The system flagged it. No one followed up. Back in the corridor, Hulkrag had continued his monologue, muscles flexing as punctuation. You know, I fought a real war choir once. 80 voices. Each one a weapon. Mira nodded. And yet you lived. Which proves they weren't very good. He growled. The ceiling lights flickered. You speak as if you've seen war. I have. Against who? Everyone. He bared his mandibles. What did you lose? She glanced up at him, and for one heartbeat, something shifted. The lights seemed to hum differently. Enough to make sure you don't walk away. Commentator booth again. She's got no armor, no upgrades, no ceremonial blade, Sasha the AI noted. Maybe she plans to bore him to death, replied the other voice, a gargled chorus from a being who'd once narrated 12 civil wars and 2 musical revivals. The holographic feed zoomed in on Myra's face. No sweat. No tension. Just eyes like unlit gun barrels. Somewhere, a clerk tried to access Myra's military records. The file opened with a hiss, and then fuzzed out. Redacted. Top clearance. Tags included. Silent ribbon ops. Black shadow clearance. Vega 6 incident. They blinked. Tried again. Access denied. The clerk flagged it. Nobody followed up. Back in the present, the arena lights shifted to blood red, signaling pre-fight fervor. Hulkrag was flexing again, rotating 3 sets of shoulders and spraying the floor with pre-battle foam. Ritual nonsense, Mira thought. He probably believed it gave him an edge. The Empire loved symbolism. She checked her wrist slate. Adjusted a timer. The announcer's voice screeched through the chamber. Let the final contest begin. The crowd erupted. Hulkrag roared. And Mira exhaled. Flashback. Years ago. A child's voice. Mommy, how many stars do you think there are? Mira, leaning against the hull of a habitat pod, answered without thinking, enough for everyone to find one. Laughter. Warm. Small. Then the sound, unexpected, hollow, of a shell detonating through the airlock. Then fire. Screams. Static. And silence. She woke up buried in rubble, one eye sealed shut, her arms wrapped around a body too small to shield. The Empire called it a misfire. She called it a beginning. Now, on the platform, Mira watched Hulkrag stomp forward, beginning his taunt cycle. She didn't move. He pounded the floor. She checked the angle of the lights. Your spine will decorate my banner, he snarled. I don't think your banner has enough class. His steps thundered. She stood still. Any final regrets? He asked. Mira blinked slowly, then said, yes. He paused. That I didn't bring a book to read while you tried. He lunged. And as the dome erupted in cheers, fireworks, and neon-laced biochemical sprays of anticipation, no one saw her smile. Just a little. Just enough. Because they still didn't understand. This wasn't her first arena. It wasn't even her most dangerous. It was simply the one that had been stupid enough to invite her. The chime struck with a discordant hum that vibrated through the bone, signaling the official commencement of what the Galactic Broadcast Authority had already dubbed, preemptively, the human flattening fiasco. Hulkrag moved like a landslide, deliberate, unstoppable, bristling with the confidence of centuries of victories and the muscle memory of over 100 kills. Each of his 9 throats emitted a different war chant, harmonized into a guttural dirge that made nearby drones shiver and flicker. His armor plates ground against each other, shedding sparks, and his forward momentum was enough to warp the shallow gravity of the arena's central disk. The crowd roared, salivated, or secreted appropriate euphoric compounds. Mira Ellison moved not at all. She waited. The arena's design, a marvel of both imperial arrogance and sadistic creativity, was an anti-gravity tessellation of rotating panels, concentric rings, and unstable pressure zones, all calibrated to favor high-mass combatants. Spikes periodically emerged from the floor like offended sea urchins. Walls twisted to disorient. The air pulsed in temperature every 7 seconds. Predictable, but just enough to ruin any rhythm. To Hulkrag, the chaos was a playground. To Mira, it was a graph. She finally moved, 1 footstep, 2, angled to the left, and paused beside a vertical panel shaped like a fong. The camera drones pivoted, zoomed. She didn't strike. She didn't pose. She was listening. To numbers. In her wrist slate, a subtle neural implant vibrated once, twice. The arena had a rhythm, not just its programmed spikes and shifts, but its commentary cadence, its crowd sound waves, the periodic electromagnetic spike from the pulsing gravity nodes. All of it calculable. Predictable. Hulkrag charged. He hit where she had been 1.2 seconds prior, an empty space now being occupied by a rapidly deploying wall segment, which caught his shoulder and twisted him mid-lunge. The crowd gasped. Not from damage. From the sheer unexpectedness. She hadn't fought. She'd stepped aside. Inside Myra's mind, the battlefield unfolded as geometry. Angles, vectors, inertia. She saw the path of every floating dust mote, the ripple of energy bleeding from Hulkrag's thermal exhaust, the lazy, spiraling descent of a single thread from her jacket sleeve. He charged again. This time, he adjusted, low trajectory, for limbs engaged, rotating into a spin kick capable of flattening armored transports. She ducked beneath a rotating platform and let it carry her 3 meters in a curve, vanishing momentarily behind an announcer panel. From within, a comm squealed. "She's hiding," one commentator bellowed. "The humans evading direct combat. Classic cowardice from a soft-boned species." "She's not hiding," murmured Sasha the AI. "She's plotting." In the audience, half a dozen spectators updated their bets. A few changed sides. One very old cephalopoid just smiled knowingly and muttered, "Ah, the math. I remember this." Hulkrag launched an incendiary roar. The resonance cracked the lower shield plating. Chunks of ceramic flooring lifted and fell. Mira walked calmly through the shrapnel, coat fluttering in the storm. Her eyes flicked once, leftward. A trajectory shift. Hulkrag's tail had twisted too far. He'd need a second to recenter his mass. She crouched, set her bag down, opened it. Inside, one legal projectile. She removed it. Not a high-velocity round. Not armor-piercing. No lasers or acid payloads. Just a bullet. But it wasn't the bullet that mattered. It was the angle. The air shimmered as Hulkrag adjusted again, now entering what he privately referred to as the Ren phase. The part where he stopped playing and began peeling things apart. He had taken out a quad-plated mech with a single blow in this mode. He'd once obliterated a rock formation by yelling at it. Mira, standing 30 feet away, didn't blink. She ran. Straight at him. The audience shrieked. It was suicide. Hulkrag surged forward. Too big, too fast. The difference in their momentum alone would liquefy her organs if he landed a hit. But Mira was counting on his assumptions. She slid at the last second, knees gliding over the smooth metal, angling her body just beneath his peripheral range. His foot missed her by inches and struck a panel which detonated on contact, unexpectedly, violently. The arena had rules. And one of them was that all surfaces were volatile if hit hard enough. The explosion staggered him. She rolled, sprang, and leapt onto a rising platform. The timing was crucial. She was lifted 30 feet into the air just as the rotation tilted the panel to 43.7 degrees. She exhaled, raised her arm, calculated the distance, the wind vectors, the rebound angles, the memory of a child laughing, the sound of a family burning. She fired. The bullet screamed into the arena with all the subtlety of a whisper. It ricocheted, once, twice, off a panel, a drone shielding, and then hit a thin sliver of exposed tissue beneath Hulkrag's topmost neck. Not enough to kill. Just enough to make him stumble. He did. Right into the upward thrust of a spike he had dodged a dozen times before. The crowd gasped. Hulkrag shrieked. The spike bent. His shoulder armor cracked. He bellowed, spinning, lashing out. One limb caught a chunk of the arena floor and flung it at her. She dropped. The slab missed. She hit a gravity pocket and bounced unnaturally high, twisting in midair like a falling seed pod. And again, she counted. 32 degrees. 100 kilograms of force. Estimated arc rebound. 7 meters left of the initial entry point. Hulkrag turned to track her descent. And then she vanished. Not literally. Just into his blind spot. The math had told her exactly when he would pivot. When the light would reflect off his ocular ridge. When the crowd would scream at exactly the wrong moment. She came down behind him. With her second move, the slate. The wrist slate, modified beyond what the Empire expected from a quota fighter, unleashed a coded pulse. Not a weapon. A request. A gravity shift. The arena obeyed. It dipped. Slightly. Not enough to register to the audience. Not enough to trip most fighters. But enough that Hulkrag, who had compensated for full gravity in his footing, slipped. One knee struck the metal. And in that precise moment of imbalance, Mira reached into her coat. The medallion. The wooden star. She kissed it, then flung it. A memory. A symbol. A distraction. Hulkrag blinked. Too late. She fired again. This time, not at him. At a drone. A ricochet. A curve. The shot struck a thermal relay. A burst of heat. Exactly 91 Kelvin. Enough to trigger the backup systems of the arena's rotation drive. Everything tilted. Hulkrag roared, flailed, caught himself, and fell directly into the anti-gravity fissure. The crowd leapt to their feet, or relevant equivalent body parts. He floated, suddenly unsupported, unable to thrust against any solid mass. For 10 full seconds, he thrashed in 0G like an angry balloon animal. Mira stood at the edge of the fissure, watching. She tapped her slate one last time. The arena rebalanced. Hulk Rag dropped. Straight down. Onto the same spike he'd bent earlier. This time, it bent no more. Silence. No breath. No cheers. Just the faint hum of the arena's lights adjusting back to neutral. Hulk Rag convulsed once. Twice. Phil. The announcer forgot to speak. Mira retrieved the bullet casing. The wooden medallion. She didn't look at the crowd. Just turned. And walked away. The scoreboard updated. Winner. Earth. A single commentator croaked out, "Well, that was mathematically improbable." Sasha replied, "No. That was precision." And above, in the Imperial box, someone whispered, "Get me her dossier. Now." But it was too late. Because Mira Ellison was already leaving the arena. And she had never needed their permission to win. The silence that followed Hulk Rag's fall wasn't simply the absence of noise. It was a vacuum of disbelief, of frozen protocol, of circuitry trying to catch up with reality. Somewhere in the arena's atmospheric filtration systems, a filter jammed from sheer confusion. One of the commentators choked on their voice modulation gel. Bets flickered and vanished from the boards like insects caught in a bug zapper. And Mira Ellison kept walking. No celebration. No raised fist. No demand for recognition. She retrieved the medallion first, the small wooden star her daughter had made from scrap during the long blackout winter of Colony 342. It was a simple thing, tied to a faded ribbon, scorched around the edges. Worthless in the eyes of the Empire. It went back in her pocket. The casing came next. Not because she needed a souvenir, but because leaving pieces of yourself behind was careless. The announcer, finally regaining function, blurted, "Unprecedented. Unpredictable. Unexpected, certainly." The feed cut to wide angle. 100 billion screens across the Empire saw a single human woman walking alone across a ruined platform, flanked by debris, blood, and a body twice her size. The crowd didn't cheer. It didn't know how. They had been promised catharsis. A human broken under the weight of galactic supremacy. Instead, they got math. They got vengeance dressed as silence. They got defeat. The Empire's bureaucracy moved fast in a panic. A backchannel pinged from the Office of Spectacle Regulation to the Diplomatic Corps. "Please advise. Was this intentional?" Another ping. "Cancel next Earth match?" "No. Schedule 2 more. Find less terrifying humans." In the broadcast control tower, a tech whispered, "Should we delay the post-fight interview?" The AI producer shrugged. "She's already left." The private corridors of the arena were not monitored. Not legally. Mira passed through them as if she'd been here before. Perhaps not this arena, but others like it. Places built by species who thought weight and spectacle made them invincible. She moved like a needle through fabric. At one juncture, she paused. 2 security officers stood in her path. Reptilian, large, confused. One said, checking his slate. "You're supposed to report for medical clearance?" "I'm not injured." "Still, the rules say." She looked up. The officer checked the slate again, then stepped aside. "Carry on." High orbit above Juxel Prime, aboard the Imperial diplomatic vessel Resplendent Destiny, Grand Minister Voralax watched the feed in increasingly distressed loops. He was a species that had evolved to regulate emotions chemically, but even so, he was leaking anxiety pheromones into the upholstery. A junior aide scuttled in. "Minister, the Earth delegation has filed an official notice of arbitration. They claim the fight was fair." "Of course it was fair. That's the problem." Voralax buried his face in a scented cloth. "She didn't just win. She made us watch her do it." "Should I cancel next cycle's Unity of All Races parade?" "Double it. Make it louder. Less unity, more glitter. We need distraction." In the far corners of the galaxy, stories spread faster than facts. A bartender on the prison moon Drect 4 whispered to his regulars. She never spoke. just moved. Like death had put on shoes. A freight captain in the Reaver Belt said, saw her once. She traded ammo for a lullaby. A smuggler in the choked maw simply raised his glass and muttered, Vega 6. No one had confirmed what happened there. No official logs. No media footage. Just a planetary system that went dark for a week and came back with all its orbital weapon arrays emptied. They said she'd been there. Just her. A mother who walked in with nothing but a rifle and a quiet grudge. Back in the arena, Hulkrag's body was being moved by drones too nervous to touch him directly. The spike was cut in half to avoid disturbing the remains. His trophy chain was respectfully disassembled. It was unclear whether he was dead by impact or shame. In a lounge deep in the structure, Sasha, the AI commentator, spoke to an empty room. You know, she said to no one in particular, this isn't the first time someone underestimated her. The silence agreed. Myra's transport shuttle was plain. No escort. No entourage. The boarding ramp hissed open with indifference. Inside, just a pilot who'd seen the match and pretended not to recognize her. Destination? He asked, already prepping the nav core. She sat. Folded her coat. Set the medallion on the seat beside her like a passenger. Anywhere they feel safe, she said. The pilot blinked. What does that mean? Mira didn't answer. Because it wasn't for him. It was for the men who dropped plasma on Colony 342. For the commanders who signed off on punitive firebombings. For the diplomats who offered apologies written by algorithm. For the entire empire, which now understood something that could never be forgotten. She had let them think she was weak. And they had taught her what not to forgive. Weeks later, a memo circulated internally among the Imperial Security Directorate. Top secret, eyes only. Subject, HUMWEAP Alpha, codename, Quiet END. Summary, combat efficiency, beyond measurable parameters. Psychological impact, extreme. Strategic recommendation, do not engage directly. Containment strategy, narrative control, heroic mythologizing, discreditation where possible. Footnote. She was not supposed to exist. On Earth, a child somewhere looked up at the night sky, unaware that a star had been named after Mira Ellison by an anonymous source. It would burn bright for millennia, charted but unexplained, just a point of light, surrounded by stories. Some said she was a ghost. Others said she was a one-woman army, the last of her kind. But those who knew better didn't call her anything at all. They simply left her name out of their plans. Because this had never been about winning. It was about making sure no one forgot what loss really looked like. And that it had a human face.